When it comes to economic policy, President Trump has made some moves not typically seen in the U.S. system. The government has taken a 10% stake in Intel. It acquired a golden share from a Japanese company that bought U.S. Steel. It's become the largest shareholder in a rare earth mine, and it's taking a 15% cut from NVIDIA and AMD's chip sales to China. The president's injecting himself into private business, and he wants to cap prescription drug prices. So, Rick, is this not socialism?
No, Trump is no socialist. He's no more a socialist than he is a Republican or conservative, and he's neither of those either. You know, a socialist believes that the means of production should be collectively owned and used for the greater good. Trump, on the other hand, believes that he should own those means of production and to be able to use them for anything that he wants, and usually that means enriching himself, his family, and anyone who else is in his good graces. If you're looking for labels, I would suggest for Trump, tyrant or autocrat. And if you're looking for a label for his economic system, I think crony capitalism works
well.
Well,
That was my next question here, was about crony capitalism. Chad?
Well, I think insofar that Trump has an ideology, I'm kind of convinced by, there's a Rutgers history professor, Jennifer Middlestott, who's argued that he's a sovereigntist, which means that he favors America's sovereignty over all international institutions, international governing bodies, and so forth. It's not too far of a step from that kind of philosophy into sort of a bellicose economic nationalism where you purchase and control all war materials, which will include semiconductors and steel. And so in this context, I think more sovereigntist, more nationalist, less socialist.
So, you know, when he is basically the government's taking a 10% stake in Intel. Intel got some of these credits from the CHIPS Act when Biden was president. Bernie Sanders says, yeah, go for it. That's a good idea.
Yes, I mean, you know, there is this wonderful book called Varieties of Capitalism that came out about 20 years ago by Holland Soskis. The problem with American capitalism that we see today is that they're constantly dependent on government largesses and subsidies in order to survive. They have almost forgotten how to generate their own profit and plow that into investments. So they're constantly, right? Remember 2008? Government took stakes on these AIG and all these failing banks. What happened then, right? That was not socialism, was it? So I think there are varieties of capitalism, and governments around the world, Norway, Germany, France, China, India, you call it, right? They all have a certain level of association with corporations where they own some stakes. Germany, the Lower Saxony holds 11.8% stake in Volkswagen. Norway has significant stake in Equinor, which is a energy company. And this has happened before. We call it state-owned enterprises. There are sovereign wealth funds where countries actively buy up stakes in companies. So I don't think it is left field at all. It is something that is not very common in the United States. In the United States, what is common is corporate socialism. When the corporations cannot generate profit, we bail them out, we socialize them, and it's capitalism for everyone else. So that is the problem that we know when
we used to hear a lot
completely common in many parts of the world.
When President Obama, you mentioned the banks, but also GM bailed out the auto industry when it was in dire straits back then during the Great Recession, and we would hear he's picking winners and losers, and he was slammed for that, Tara.
Oh, he absolutely was. But at least with President Obama, there was a better sense of what the long-term gain would be for the country. And one of the things that has really struck me about the deal-making of the president and the United States government having an investment, or actually financially benefiting from these deals, is that we don't have a sense, at least I haven't been able to figure it out, of the cost of these deals versus the amount the taxpayers will actually see. Now, yes, we have sort of the general idea of, okay, this goes into the country's coffers and et cetera. But at the same time, as you are sort of going to ultimately financially benefit from some of these deals as a country, you also have to look at all of the cuts that are being made in governmental programs. So will the public really see much of an actual benefit from all of these deals that the government is making? Or, as was correctly pointed out, will it simply be those who are connected to Trump and or parts of the Republican Party?
I would point out that the Republican Party has flirted with quasi-socialism recently in our lifetimes. I mean, you go back 25 years and the push to privatize Social Security, that's effectively a plan to take tax dollars and buy private equity in firms under the guise of, it's my savings account for retirement. No, that's public ownership of private enterprise. That would have been a socialist breeding ground for, what did you say, cronyism, crony capitalism, corruption, the exact kind of thing that like true conservatives would fight against. What's a little bit different now is Trump had this amazing ability to bring in economic populists into the Republican Party. That's about a quarter of the Republican Party today. These are the former Democrats who have sort of been swayed. They're the ones who I think like this economic policy that Trump's putting forward, and the rest of the traditional Republican base is really uneasy, let's say.
And the president has, you mentioned sovereign wealth fund, has floated an idea. We should have a sovereign wealth fund. So,
2025,
yeah. Okay. So quickly, can you explain that? What is it,
sovereign
and
wealth
why
fund is?
should we or not have one?
Sovereign Wealth Fund is a government-owned wealth fund that it might use to fund things like retirement programs. Kind of autocratic regimes like Singapore operate really successful ones, but it is a government ownership of private enterprise, and then it opens this up to...
That gets us to
Same thing. Although, we have tax policy that kind of works at the same thing when you take special tax breaks for different industries. There are different ways of dealing with industrial policy.